Alright, we got Mr. Mochi here. I had already started brushing on him some. I had another client who was on their way to pick up their dog, so I just didn't start recording until now since the other client is gone. I didn't want to stop grooming him with the recording. But Mr. Mochi is a Bichon, and he is, I believe, 7 months old now. This is going to be his first big boy haircut. Thankfully, the owner was very receptive to feedback with him in the early stages. He came in at 8 weeks and was terrified of pretty much the majority of the services. And so I got Mama on a 2-week rotation, getting him used to things, and then we went out to 1 month, and now here we are fixing to do the big boy cut, and she takes extremely good care of his coat. There's only been like 1 or 2 tangles ever that he's come in with, so she's really good about keeping up with him. It's really nice, especially if she's a younger lady. It's nice to see younger people with the care of the dog this way. So he was in a couple of weeks ago for just a bath, the puppy trim, the face, feet, and fanny. And at that point I told her I think we're ready for an all-over body cut, and that's what she scheduled him in for today. I think I'm going to start off with an A-guard. The A-guard is 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to wash him first, get his hair all uniform, and then we'll come back and start the actual haircut on him. He's still a little indifferent, but he's a good boy. Yeah, he's a good boy. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get Mr. Mochi all finished grooming. I did end up finding a couple of tangles in his coat that I did not know about before the bath. It's recommended to get those out before the bath because usually water added to a mat will make it tighter. Once the hair is dried, it shrinks, and then the mats get larger and tighter. So I'm just going to do a quick brush out, and then I'm going to go to those little zones. He's got one behind his ear, he's got one right here on his leg. The one behind the ear I'm going to use the clippers to buzz out. That one I'm going to use a mat breaker. He's got one on his bum, and I think one more on one of these legs. I have to go and hunt for it because I forgot. But yeah, when you have puppy coat and adult coat at the same time, it's really difficult to keep that managed. There are 2 different textures. So what I like to say is it's like the Civil War. They're fighting against each other, and 2 textures usually clash and get tangled and knotted. So for what it's worth, like I was mentioning earlier, the owner is doing really well with taking care of him. started his bath. He's still uncertain about some of the drying, but it's a part of the learning process. He'll get used to it. She sent me a couple of photos of ideas for his trim, and I'm going to try to mimic those. It's hard to get an idea of what a length is based on a photo a lot of the times. So I'm just going to do my best representation of that, and then also what would fit his body type, because that's another aspect of grooming. When you have cute photos online versus the dog in front of you, sometimes the coat's not the same, the body is not the same proportions. Example, the head is often one of those things that you have a harder time trying to meet the owner's wishes because of the different head shapes. Like a lot of times it's Yorkies. I've struggled more with that than I think any other breed. The Yorkie owners will come in and have a photo of a very well-bred puppy, perfect face and great hair, and usually it's the puppy coat that you're seeing in these photos. So the puppy coat and the adult coat lay differently. Puppy coat's like frizzier, fluffier, and the adult coat is a little bit more flat. That's with Yorkies. And so the Yorkie they'll bring in is, you know, not as high quality of a dog, and they don't have the same face, so you can't get the same look on the face, because usually the ones that are less well-bred have longer muzzles and things like that, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, longer muzzles in dogs in general is healthier because they can breathe easier, less brachiatic, like they don't have as hard of a time in the heat and things like that as well. Like dogs such as pugs and Frenchies and American Bulldogs, these are all types of dogs who really struggle for breathing. Shih Tzus are also really hard to breathe because of their nose is so flush against their face. There's hardly any room to breathe. And then those breeds oftentimes have to have surgeries to repair nasal passages and all kind of things. It's a hard life. So I like my Frenchies a lot, but that's the one thing about them that is not so good. Okay. And so the reason I'm going to clip this spot out behind the ear versus brushing it is because that skin there is very sensitive, can tear easy, and also this is kind of a large area, and it wouldn't be very pleasant for him to have to endure the demount. So in the end, you have to think about what's best for the dog versus the aesthetics. It's humanity over vanity. Just because you want the dog to look cute doesn't mean that the dog should suffer for hours on end to achieve a look because the owner didn't take care of the coat properly. But like I said earlier, this lady does a really good job on taking care of him. He just had that civil war going on with his coat because of the puppy versus adult. I'm going to trim his paw pads first, and then when I'm done with the haircut, I'm going to cut his nails. I wanted wanted to wait until his coat was a little bit shorter. That way there's less of a chance to accidentally catch the coat on the journal head. And that's painful for them. Oftentimes I'll do this part first before I do the bath, but since I did his face, feet, and fanny trim 2-ish, 3-ish weeks ago, it's not terribly bad. So what will happen is if the dog's got a longer coat and hasn't been seen as often, the hair on the bottom of the feet is going to be really, really, really long, and you're going to want to go ahead and trim that out before the bath so that you can dry the foot easier. But then what also happens is once you finish drying the dog, you're going to have little hairs that weren't readily visible on the first trim pre-bath. So you're going to have to go into those areas and trim it again anyway, so that's why. And so I personally like to take all of this. I don't go, terribly short. I just kind of skim this out, but I do go tighter toward the ear. And this is just to help the ear have flow so that it can breathe, air can get in. It prevents ear infections, things like that. And when the ear is down, you can't see that was done, and it looks nicer anyhow because the face is easier to shape up, in my opinion. I'm going to do his sanitary, and then I'm going to start the actual groom. Like I was mentioning earlier with the photos and the lengths and things like that, I'm going to start with a little bit of a longer blade to make sure that I'm not going to take too much off to defeat the groom. I don't want to, it'll all grow back, but I don't also want to make it too short that the owner's unhappy with it. Things happen, but if I can prevent it, I'm going to try. Alright, so I'm going to start with the A guard, like I was mentioning earlier. That's the 3/4 of an inch blade. And see what it looks like, and if not, I'll go down to a shorter blade. See how I feel about it. Yeah. Boy. I like to help feed the hair into the clipper. When you're using a guard comb, it's oftentimes a little bit harder to get the hair all the same length, because if the hair lays down, then it's not going to connect with the blade that's actually doing the cutting. And so that's when you come back and you back brush to make sure that you're catching all of the hairs. And it'll be amazing sometimes how much hair gets missed when you do your back brush and you go over it again and see all of the hair that was still there. So far I'm liking this length, but I want to get a little bit more into it before I make my decision if I want to go down. And so you want to go with the grain, which is in this pattern. That's the way the hair flows on the body. And there's a tangle right here. this is a good reason to have different types of combs, different lengths. The tines are spread out or less apart to make sure you can get little things like that you missed. Alright, I'm going to back brush and go over it again and see what I think. On other videos I talk about time, ways to make your time go faster grooming. I usually only back brush 2 times. And the reason is after the second time I'm back brushing and I'm not getting a lot off, that means it's pretty much all there, like the hair is where it's supposed to be. And then I'll just scissor. If there's like any little hairs that are sticking out, that's when you go back and you do your finishing of the groom with the shears and just scissor it up. Back to feeding it in, so I just basically take a hold of the hair and I kind of make sure that the blade catches it. On the stomach you can go reverse because it's less noticeable. If you're afraid to go too low in your reverse, you can go up a blade or 2 and then do your reverse, but I'll usually use the same blade if I'm using a guard comb. On this type of coat, when you got like a flat coat, it will take more off going in reverse, but the fluffier the coat, I don't see it taking as much off. I like to go forward and reverse on the back of the leg because you have the hair growing together in weird directions there. So you just want to try to make sure it's as even as possible. And if he gets too worked up about me doing his legs, I have a hammock that I can put him in. This is our first time actually taking clippers down the legs and things like that, so this is new for him. He doesn't really know what to think. The only areas that the clipper has touched is his head, his eye corners, and his paw pads, and a sanitary. That's pretty much it. So even though he's been in 6 or so times now, this is still a new thing for him, and you have to be mindful of that. You can't get upset with them for acting out a little bit because this is still something that they're not used to having done. Alright, I'm going to back brush the body one more time, and then I'm going to move over to the other side, and then I'm going to do the legs one more time individually, and then move on to the head before I start doing any kind of finishing touches like going over the feet and rounding them out. Much to see over here with the camera angle, but you got the gist of what I did on the other side to know what's happening here. It's the same old song and dance. brush number 1. And he's a little stressed out over it, that's why he's panting, but he's still acting really good. The longer the stroke, the better the haircut's going to be as well. So like when you're doing these smaller strokes, sometimes the hair won't be even. So when you're getting on to long sections of trimming, try to make sure you just follow it out as long as you can. It makes everything look nicer. It's easier to groom that way too, because then you're not having to go back and try to fix things that aren't lining up well because you come at it differently. You also have to be mindful about the angle of your clipper, because the way you're holding the clipper to the skin is also going to connect to how low that area is going to get. So you want to try to always keep the blade as flush with the skin as possible and not go in like that and dig. You want to try to make sure it's always a flat surface. Something that will also help in areas like the knee. I like to go in and take it like that, and you're making sure that you're not catching any of the skin and pulling it up in. So if you take and go like that, you're catching all those hairs around that side of the knee. Also on the butt area, you can do the same thing, like go in like this. That's going to help bring all of that to the same length. It's going to lessen the amount of scissoring you have to do. Sometimes this area you have to go down on a blade to make it look right. I'm going to have to go back into his sanitary though and get some of that, so I'll be back to that in a minute. Alright, now I'll back brush the feet again and focus on it, all of the feet individually. He's being a little passive aggressive right now. So you see how much I got off with that back brush just then, when I've already been down that area before. Alright, so then I'm going to walk away from that, start going to the other legs, and then when I come back to scissor everything, it'll be faster. You have a fresh eye to that zone. I do not answer any phone calls while I'm grooming. I want to make sure that my focus is completely on the dog. I have a detailed voicemail that mentions that while I'm working on a client, I do not divert my attention from that dog. There's only one time that I'll ever answer a call while working on a dog, and that's if I have a client who is on their way to pick up the dog that's already completed, and I'm working on a different dog. That's the only time, because I lock my door, and my salon is set up in an area in which the grooming area is not, you can't see the lobby. It's all separate. It's a room. All of my grooming are in rooms. I have the kennels in a room. I have the bathing area in one room, and then the lobby in another room. It's what I would have done if I didn't find a shop that already had that same floor plan. I would have put up walls or something, because I don't want to ever have it open to customers viewing. I know a lot of people don't want their dogs to be groomed if they can't physically view them, but there are detrimental things about a dog being able to see its owner. They act out, they try to get to the owner, all kind of things. And then also, owners are not statues, and they're moving around. And so the dog sees them moving around, and then that's distracting, and so on and so on. So I try to make it as whatever is possible. So if an owner wants to stay for the groom, that's fine. They can stay and they can be up in the lobby, but they can't come back to where I'm grooming. My insurance also plays a part in the owners not being in the grooming area, because my insurance does not cover anyone but me. So I can't have a customer who wants to assist in the groom. No customer is going to be able to hold the dog or do anything like that at my salon while I'm grooming it because of my insurance. Alright, getting my 10 back to come back into the sanitary. So he is not neutered. He's intact. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm skimming. I'm not going too close. And that's just catching all of the little hairs that's floating up. And then I'm going to go down lightly on the inside of the leg. Depending on the length of the dog, will depend on how tight you go on the inside of the leg. So you'll see here, it's just ever so slightly catching all the little extra pieces and laying them down. I'm still going to have to come back here and scissor this stuff. Get my guard back on, and then I'm going to do the back of his neck. And so I'm going to take and put his arm up through the loop to do a crossbody. And he's going to want to lay down, and I'm not going to let him. We need to stand for this. There are some services that dogs can lay, but the majority of the services they need to stand. So you see how the face is getting proportionate to the body now? Um, the little face, feet, and fanny trims that I was doing on him, I was having to bring the head down lower than the body just to make the head make sense. It wouldn't look right if there was a whole bunch of crazy flyaways on his top of his head after his groom, just because his body wasn't groomed yet. So the back of the neck, the back of the head has, the skull has a bone that kind of protrudes off. It's all connected. It's not separate. It's that little bump on the back of the neck, the back of the head, I keep saying it wrong, is called the occiput, and you'll feel it, and that's where the neck ends and begins. And that's where you start whatever you're doing to that dog. Alright, I'm gonna back brush and go over that again. Like I said before, that's just bringing the hairs to life so you can see what was missed. I'm going to do it to the neck now. You see how he's still uncertain on how he's supposed to move around, because this is a new part of our services together. He hasn't done this before. Flip the ear back, make sure you get all the way to that jawline. The ear and the jaw, just like ours, comes together, and that's where you trim from. So you got the ear and the jaw. So I'm going to come in and grab all of this to separate it.
What do you think? Huh? What do you think?
I think I'm going to scissor his head. I don't think I'm going to use a clipper. I'm liking the length that it is now to the body, so I think that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start scissoring. And you brush the coat down. This is just making sure there's no more tangles. I've had dogs where I've went over it with a comb 100 times and come back and boom, there's a tangle that I didn't see. Alright, so now that we're sure that there's no tangles in here, I'm going to then take and brush up. And then I'm going to very, very, very lightly go around, because his foot shape is almost there now from being groomed not too long ago. Like I said, so slightly. And then I'm going to bring the hair down. And then I'm going to go over it again, very, very, very slightly. And I'm going to come back up again. See how it makes that nice edge. He's got a little bit of toenail sticking out because I haven't done his toes yet. But yeah, you just pull the hair out a little bit with your fingers and you just go down. and making it all even. When you have a curved shear like this, and you take it and you do the back side of the curve, you got to be careful because you're making a straight cut there. So you have to be careful that you're not going in too hard and taking too much off, because you're going to have a big old straight line where you're supposed to have a rounded area. Alright, so the front foot, do the same thing. I remember earlier we had a tangle up in here. Alright, so that's all brushed out. Now I'm going to brush it back up. And start with light, light, light. You're just making it look round and beautiful now. And then you're going to brush it down and do the edges. You see how it's like weird looking now? So you go back over it a little bit. Go back up. Yeah. And sometimes you'll have to do that several times. It's not just 1, 2, 1 and done. It's a handful of times to get it right. Alright, fluff it out. Make sure you know where that bump is on the back of the leg so you're not going to catch it with your shears. Fluff this out. Back of the knee, elbow. Yeah. Fluff this out. Don't forget, there's that bump there. Lightly go up into the armpit. You don't want to go too hard into the armpit and then accidentally cut anything. So that's a little, it's not exactly what I wanted on that foot, but that's okay. It still looks decent. And I have to do the nails still, so that's something to take into consideration. Alright, brush down. Get your head out of the way. I'm going to have to put your head up. Alright. Brush up. mentioning, go really, really light because you don't want to take too much off and then be stuck with a really wonky looking foot. So, looks real nice. Alexa, what time is it?
It's 12:47 p.m.
I don't have much time till my next doggy gets here. And I still have to do your head and your nails. go ahead real quick. If you already do top knots and silhouette trims and things like that, redoing a head shouldn't be too difficult. Keyword shouldn't. I'm not telling anyone how they should or should not feel about how they groom. Alright, so I bring it forward to catch all that little stuff right there in the front. Back again. Yeah, also be careful for the little ones who move their heads a lot. Alright. Fluff it up. I'm going to start going across the top like this. This is going to prevent there being a line. Like when you go like that, there's a line. I like to do that little ear thing to help fluff up the hair. It mimics them when they shake their head. Look at me. And so it's already coming together a lot, you see. Be really careful when you're doing this, so you know where the ear is, because you can accidentally catch the corner of the ear doing that. I had me a pair of curved chunkers. That was my preferred method to do this. Chunkers and thinners are a godsend. They are just amazing products that really help to make a natural look. You're going to have to scissor more, but you're going to not have that fear of taking too much off and creating the look that you're going for. I will come through with the thinners in a second, but my curved chunkers did the dust. Something that I like to do to the front lip is I like to shave that off. It just makes it look a little bit neater. Make sure you don't take too much off. You're lightly going through because you don't want a whole bald up lip. If the dog moves a lot, that's probably not a good idea to do, because then you're going to have that. The other option would be taking your thinners and just going through that area, but if the dog moves, you're going to catch the nose or the lip or something like that, and thinning shears are super sharp. shears. Grooming erasers. You should remember how to act for your face. Lemmy, look how cute you are right now. You're adorable. I'm probably only going to be able to finish your head and then do your nails after. What a good boy. I like the length of his ears right now. I think that length is nice for that head shape. Moving around like that, you get to see little things. You always want to keep moving. Don't stand in one spot and look at something. You gotta move it around all kind of areas and make sure that everything is even. And that's another thing about grooming. You can groom the same dog for an hour if you have no time restraints. After the dog's finished grooming, you could continue to go over and over and over and over it. So your little toes. So I might have to touch up the feet a little bit once I finish his nails, because then I'll have little hairs that are going to stick out beyond now. This is why you usually do it first, because then you're going back over something a second time that should have been done. But I was worried about his hair getting stuck in the journal. When dogs are puppies, their food and everything has higher fat content and everything else like that, and usually what happens is puppy nails grow super fast. Like, you might have to go in twice a month for just the nails to be done. Alright, I'll go around the back. I do it. Alexa, what time is it?
It's 1:02 p.m.
Oh, so it's past 1 o'clock, which is when my next appointment was supposed to be here. So that's good and bad. It's good that I have the little extra time. Good that I have the extra time, bad that I don't have my next client here on time. That's something that is very detrimental in grooming, is unfortunately a lot of people think that, oh, it's just a grooming appointment, I don't have to be there at that time, but if you think about it, this is our livelihood, and we only schedule to the length of time it will take to complete that groom, and then we have other appointments scheduled, usually right after. So what will happen is one person comes in late, you're grooming the dog, your next customer gets in while you're still grooming that dog. You have to finish grooming that dog before you can start grooming the dog that come in on time, and so then you're late ending that groom, you're late starting the next groom, and so on and so on. So someone who's late 20 minutes, by the end of the day, you're going to be an hour or so behind because you had to make that groom still happen if you can. Some groomers, like myself, if the dog is there too late, I don't have the availability to do it. So what will happen is if the owner doesn't come in, I don't call them. I don't call them because after a certain amount of time, the rest of my schedule is going to be thrown off, and I prefer not to, live in that stress of being behind, and other clients who were on time and did what they were supposed to do then have to be punished for one person who didn't plan accordingly. Always call your groomer, ask them, hey, I'm sorry I was late for XYZ reason. Can you still take me, or should I reschedule? It's always a lot more stressful for everyone involved when you just show up late to an appointment and expect to be groomed when sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's not possible, Mochi. Do not know who that is. This would be another time where I would answer it if it was the client who was supposed to be in, but I have all my clients' numbers saved, so it's not him for sure. Alright, that was my Quicker Slicker spray. It has the the stuff makes the skin and coat really soft. It has a light scent, but it doesn't really have much of a scent to call that the end room. So I'm gonna spray them up with some other stuff. Today I'm using the Bark to Basics Passion Fruit. That's what I just used. And now I'm gonna get him a bandana. And there's no worries, I'm literally a foot away. Just right behind the camera, huh? Oh boy. And that's it. He's all done. His first big boy cut.